Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this session. My name is Roisin Garvey. I work in the Department of Technology and Enhanced Learning here in MTU. And what I'm going to go through today is Canvas accessibility. So we're going to look at how to create an inclusive digital learning environment here in MTU. I'm just going to double check that the stream is okay. All looks okay there. Okay. So if you do have any questions throughout this, do feel free to use the chat or to use the Q&A, and I'll try to address any questions that you might have as we go through, or if you'd like to ask any questions at the end. I'll also share some links to further resources. I'm also going to share the slide deck itself because I link out at various points to other resources that we have available. And I'll also show you again our email address if you have any queries you want to follow up with anything that I've covered today. That's no bother. I'm just going to turn off my camera just while I do this session, and we'll work away in it. So I suppose what we're looking at lately is an increasingly diverse learner group. Um, our student population can include students with disabilities, but it can also include students who are returning to education, non-native speakers. We've got students from different cultural and educational backgrounds. And then we have students who may have short-term injuries or illnesses. You know, the list goes on. We do really need to look at how we can best support a whole range of different learners that we might have. So all of this diversity, I suppose, and the diverse needs can present in different ways. So what does this mean for our teaching and learning environment? Well, we could have students who have difficulties in accessing information. So maybe there are people with visual or hearing impairments. We might have people with physical disabilities, and they might experience barriers in accessing the information in the first place. So they might rely on screen readers and text to speech or other assistive technologies. And we want to try to support any students who might have these needs. We could also have students with comprehension or information processing difficulties. We could have students with poor time management or organizational skills. Maybe we've students who find it difficult to see linkages in content or in maybe in linkages between, say, the learning outcomes and the assessments that might be shared on the module. Students with poor attention and recall, or students who have issues with time-bound assessments. So that could be um, they might have an issue with a set 2-hour assessment and might need reasonable accommodations for that. Or you might have a student, if you have a poll in your class and you have it set for a certain time, that might put a bit of pressure on students as well. So we're just trying to kind of consider all of these different aspects when sharing material with our students. So digital accessibility, it basically kind of ensures that any digital content that we're sharing, whether it's on websites or on our learning management system, if it's files or anything like that, that they're designed to be as usable as possible for everybody, so including anyone with disabilities. It's now a legal requirement in Ireland that at a minimum that the content that we share adheres to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1 AA standards. But we would try to see this as a kind of a minimum, really, that we would look at expanding on this and seeing how we can make our Canvas modules as inclusive as possible as well. So there are the guidelines themselves are at 2.2. They were developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, and that they develop international standards for the design and development on the web. Here in MTU, because we're a public body, all our content, whether it's on the main website or whether it's through Canvas, it really needs to be accessible as well. So it doesn't matter if you need to log into it, because we're a public body, we do need to do this. And also just kind of maybe try and make it a part of our kind of practice generally. So in this session, it's a short session, but as I said, I'm going to share the slides and I'm going to share the resources at the end of it. What I'm going to look at is some considerations for Canvas, our digital learning environment, that will hopefully ensure consistency, clarity, and simplicity for our students. A lot of the tips that I'll be sharing today will be kind of rooted in universal design and instructional design, and all sort of come under the sort of the heading of digital accessibility. I'll also have a look at some digital accessibility tools and resources that can help staff and students. So we have some resources that are available within Canvas to help. And I'm just going to touch on some common accessibility issues and how to address them. So these would link in as well with those tools that I'll be going through today. So the first one I'm going to look at is the kind of the considerations around Canvas. So these mightn't seem like they would link back to the web content accessibility guidelines, but they do in a way. And what we're looking at firstly is how to ensure kind of a consistency around our structure and the kind of content that we're making available for students through Canvas. So the first tip here really is related to the Canvas units. So I have screenshots here in much of the slides showing just some of these tips in action. And at the end, I'm going to jump over into a Canvas module itself that I'll be able to kind of demonstrate some more of them. If you do have any questions or anything is unclear, do feel free to just let me know, and I can show you within Canvas itself. So here in MTU, we have a lot of lecturing staff who will make content available through the Canvas units. This tends to be how students will know to kind of find information, how they might look for information. It helps to kind of put a structure on the content that you might be sharing with your students. So we would kind of consider it like folders of information. And a tip here that we usually give is to try to maybe create units that will correspond to the weeks of the semester. So week 1, you might have your slides and your kind of recordings or your reading around that, and you could have week 2 then as a different unit. Another tip around here in terms of kind of trying to make things as structured as possible and kind of make it as consistent as possible is to add headings within your Canvas unit. So you can see over here on the right that I have a heading of class slides, and then I have my slide deck underneath it. And it just helps to further categorize the information that you're sharing for your students and give a little bit more context around that. And basically, it kind of all comes down to how you're signposting your students around Canvas itself. Another tip as well that we recommend is to keep your module menu within Canvas as consistent as possible and try to remove any unused links. Now, Canvas is quite, it has a quite a handy feature that if you don't have any content under your assignments or under your quizzes or things like that, it actually will be hidden by default for your students. But you can also have a look at maybe further kind of removing the items that are available under the Canvas menu if you're not going to be using them. To do this, you can go into your settings and your navigation. This is the screenshot here, and you can kind of drag and drop them up to what is visible or not. So if there's anything like discussions that you're not using, again, they're going to be turned off by default. But if you do have them in there, that they'll pop up. But you can rearrange them as well here, quite handy. So you can kind of put a bit of a hierarchy on your module menu as well. So that can be quite useful for your students. Another kind of tip here that we recommend as well is to click on the student view, or the button that says view as student. And that will kind of help you see what most students will see when they come into your course. You can kind of see if there's any redundant links that you have available in your Canvas menu. Another thing as well that can help with signposting around your Canvas module is to include links to the content that you might be referring to when you're adding an announcement or when you're adding an assessment. So for instance, if you want to put up an assignment and you want to say, okay, well, look, this relates to the material that we covered in week 3 or anything like that, or it might refer to some slide deck in particular. Canvas has this feature that lets you to quickly add in a module link, and it'll show up with this menu, which you can see on the side here of this slide. And it gives you the option to search for the specific content that you're looking for, or you can direct students to, say, the units, which is under the module navigation, or a specific unit. So if I say this assignment is based on the content of week 3, I can put in a direct link and click here and choose the week 3 unit, and it'll kind of provide that link for the student to get to the content that they might be looking for. If you want to go a step further in terms of kind of structure and consistency, you could add a module homepage. This can kind of give your students a bit more information on and guidance on the maybe how you be laying out your module. It can kind of help manage expectations if you want to include information like how you will be communicating with your students, or maybe how you expect them to communicate with you. I have a link in there as well to a help article that we have about adding a homepage. The kind of handy thing about this is very often this information can be reused across modules, and maybe because very often the way we might teach on one module might be the same as we teach on others. So we could maybe copy and paste and just make small edits to hopefully kind of speed up that process, because it is a busy time of the year. But that can be something that can be quite useful to kind of help guide students through your Canvas module. So as I said, this is often something that you can kind of reuse across your different modules. But there is this example here that I have on the right is using H5P's accordion tool. And that lets me kind of chunk the content that I'm showing on my homepage, and giving that kind of module overview and information about the assessments that will be coming up in the module itself, and just having it in this kind of accordion format, where if a student were to click on where to start, it'll have that specific information about where to start, or if they click on assessment overview, it has that as well. And because it's done in H5P, it's very easy to kind of share across your modules and update as well if it is something that you find useful. These next few tips will relate to communication and feedback within your Canvas module. So a good tip here as well is to kind of let your students know early on how you will be communicating with them, and again, how you expect them to communicate with you. I suppose it does vary across MTU how staff are communicating with students, and it really does come down to a preference for you as a lecturer. So maybe it's something that you want to use the announcements feature throughout. There is the option to allow comments on it. Or you can just do email, or just do the kind of Canvas inbox, but maybe just kind of letting your students know at the start of the semester to help kind of manage those expectations as well. And a good idea here as well, if possible, to provide clear and consistent updates. So, continue to kind of communicate with your students through through this announcement feature or through the same kind of communication methods. Another tip as well is around kind of key dates. Sometimes this isn't possible at all, but if it is possible, try to outline key dates and assessment deadlines as early in the semester as possible. So one tip here would be adding these elements into the Canvas module calendar, and that way it kind of will show up. You can see this here. There's an agenda view that I've shown up here, which shows like all the kind of the key dates within the next few weeks for the students, and just kind of help students if they want to be able to kind of prepare for particularly busy points in the semester. Another one as well is around kind of feedback. So, providing clear and consistent feedback on module assessments, again, where possible. But Canvas does have built-in tools within the speed grader that will use kind of speech to text. You also have the option of kind of adding audio files or video files. If you would find this to be a convenient way to add feedback rather than typing out feedback, it might be quicker for you. So that's another option there around the feedback. I will say with all of these kind of tips, they are just that. They're just tips. If you find that maybe even one of them might help, or you might feel like you're able to add one of these elements into your teaching this semester, that's great. You'll find out what works for you as well, and all of it will help to support the students here in MTU. One quick kind of handy feature as well, though, is using the module syllabus. So this is available within the Canvas module menu. It provides an auto-populated module summary. So if you're lecturing online and any of your scheduled Zoom sessions will all show up here in the module summary. And it also gives you an opportunity to put in a little bit of a kind of a welcome message or a little bit of guidance above that. And you can set that as the main point that students see when they come into your module. So you don't have to worry about doing a homepage. Maybe you want to just have this one area that students will have the information from you in terms of, say, maybe how you want to communicate. But also it might have the module summary that has all of that auto-populated information about any of the key dates or any of the classes or assessments or anything like that. Any deadlines that you create in an assignment or in a quiz, they'll auto-populate within that as well. So it can be quite useful to have everything in one area. A quick tip here as well, if you do use pages within your Canvas module, there is an option at the very end of the page to add it to the student to do. So what that might be useful for is if you have things like, I mentioned here supplementary reading materials or anything like that, or if you have any information about labs, we'll say, a kind of a README file, like read this before you do that. You can add it to the to-do, and so that will pop up as a task for students to kind of to do, I suppose. So it can be quite handy to draw their attention to a particular element within your module. The next tips here, there's only a short amount of these as well. These relate to kind of formatting and language within your module. So in pages and in announcements and in assignments within your Canvas module, you will see what we refer to as a rich content editor. So I have a screenshot of it here on the slide. And what that has is very common styles and formatting tools that you would see in a lot of kind of word processors like Word or Google Docs or things like that. So it can be quite handy to be able to, use the sort of accessible formatting to kind of help your students basically access the information as easy as possible. So for instance, this is an important one if you have a student who might be using a screen reader, and also just to be able to kind of structure your content as clearly as possible. So that's something that's available to you. The other thing as well, and this is actually part of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, is if you are using headers or if you're using lists, to use the actual formatting options within the rich content editor. So a big one here is not skipping headings. So if you have a heading 2 and you've content under that, you shouldn't be jumping then to heading 4. This can kind of catch people because often the pre-built headings and things like that, they will often look a certain way, and some people kind of will choose it based on the style of it. But it just helps students an awful lot if you have it following like a correct order, in a linear fashion. The other thing as well is, formatting lists with the bullet points or the list options that are available within the content editor rather than just doing a dash or something and using lists like that. Fonts as well. So it is something that's available to change the fonts within your Canvas module. So if you were creating an announcement or a page, you can change the fonts. Again, in your rich content editor, if you go up to format and go down to fonts, you can choose a font here. Sans serif fonts are more accessible. So these are the ones that don't have the sort of the tails on them, like the Georgia font there. And at a minimum, kind of the 12 point here for text as well. So those are kind of best practices there in terms of font. A big one here, and I think I'm going to cover it shortly there as well, separately, is trying to avoid using color alone to highlight information. So sometimes it's very easy to kind of highlight something in red if it's important. But by right, this should be also highlighted in some other way, whether it's underlined or in bold. The reason for this is just if you have someone using a screen reader, it won't be very obvious that this might be important information. Maybe your student has visual impairment or is colorblind or anything like that. But a quick tip here as well is if you have the information printed out in black and white, would the content on your page still make sense? And that's kind of a good way of checking it as well, is just, would it make sense without those additional kind of colors to kind of add emphasis. So these other ones as well are things like, ensuring your text is as clear as possible, that it's using simple language. It's not always easy to do, to kind of use simple language and kind of avoid jargon in your modules or avoid very technical terms, particularly when these are academic modules. But a tip here would be maybe providing something like a glossary that could be made available within your module. And again, quite possible to maybe reuse across different modules if you're teaching kind of similar subjects and things. It's something that I will be sharing shortly as well, is how to create a glossary easily in H5P. So that will be a resource that I'll be able to share, and it'll be something that you'll be able to kind of copy and edit yourself and make available yourself if it was of interest to you. It just kind of helps students to have something to refer back to if they're kind of reading or going through the content that you have. What I'm just going to show you now is just a couple of tools and resources that are available within Canvas itself. And the tip here is really just to make use of these kind of tools and technologies where possible. I'm going to jump over to Canvas in a second, but there's two kind of aids within Canvas. There's a Canvas accessibility checker, which is available. It's kind of a built into Canvas, and it's available within pages and announcements and assignments where you're kind of using that rich content editor. If you can see down here in my slides, it's a little accessibility symbol. And anytime there's something that needs your attention, a little icon will pop up with the number. So here it's showing me that there's one item that needs my attention. And a little panel shows up, and very often you can actually update the content and improve the accessibility of that particular item within that page itself. And what it does as well is it will give you a little bit of guidance on what might be causing an issue, why it drew your attention to this particular thing and how you might be able to improve it. The other item that's available within Canvas is You Do It. So this is I've an error there with the text, so I'll get that updated. But this lets you scan your entire module, so you can run it at module level. It'll scan your entire module and it'll show you potential accessibility issues. So I have Sorry, no, I brought this over from PowerPoint into Google Slides, so it's a little bit the formatting is a little bit off. But what it'll do is it'll provide a list of errors and suggestions. So the errors are categorized based on the web content accessibility guidelines and what would most likely cause issues for a user. And then the suggestions are things that just can make improvements to the learning environment. So it's quite handy that you can categorize things like that. If I just jump over into Canvas, I'm just going to show you an example of these in action. So if I go into my pages, and I'm just going to click on a page here just to show you how to where I'd be editing it. Okay, I'm going to click on this one here. And if I go up here and click edit, this is my built-in Canvas accessibility checker. So this is where it shows up. It shows up in a little panel here. If I add a caption to it, I see my prompt up here about, why it's good to add your caption. And if I click on apply, it actually fixes that within the window here itself. So it can be quite useful. It kind of speeds up a lot of the updating, and then I can just go down and click on save. You Do It Accessibility Assistant is here in the module menu under just the name accessibility, and this is the module-wide accessibility checker. So what I can do is I can run it from here. When I click on scan, it'll scan my entire module and it'll show me the potential issues that might be in my Canvas module. And when I click on You Fix It, I can see all the list of errors, all the suggestions, any ones that I fixed or any ones that I might have marked resolved. Now, this looks so overwhelming, and I completely appreciate that. But what you can do is you can actually filter the results, and you can kind of see if you want to tackle it based on different categories or different things like that. So you can filter it based on the content type. So maybe you just want to address any of the announcements that you put out or any of the pages. You can actually filter it based on the impact. So perhaps you have a student who's disclosed an auditory issue or anything like that. You can filter based on just maybe the issues that might affect that person particularly. You can also go filter by, active or resolved or fixed issues. And then down here is kind of a handy one. So very often each semester we might kind of maybe copy content from past modules into, the current Canvas modules that you might be using. And often some of the material isn't going to be used in your new Canvas module. It just kind of pulls over everything, and you might just be publishing some amounts of it. So what this will let you do is it'll let you hide unpublished content or unused content. So what this refers to is content that's not found in the units. So they refer here to units as modules, or content that's not linked by other content. So it's not like you're not using a module link. And that can kind of help focus in on, say, current issues that might affect your students at the moment. The other thing you can do as well is you can filter by what's easiest to fix. and then filter by maybe the issue itself. So look, I'm going to sit down here for 20 minutes and I'm just going to focus on issues affecting, color alone, the using color for emphasis alone. And then that'll kind of filter all of those things based on that. So it can kind of make it less overwhelming, but it's it'll depend on the kind of module that you have yourself, and the information that you're uploading. What it also does is it'll also scan the files that you've uploaded as well. So if you've got PDFs maybe that haven't gone through the accessibility check, it'll make suggestions based on those as well, and you can kind of review them. It also allows you to create an alternate format for the content. So perhaps you have a PDF that you want to make available as an MP3 file or something like that for your students, that they can listen back to it instead. This will let you kind of convert it within UDoIT as well, and then you can make that available to your students. So UDoIT is something that isn't visible to the students, unless like that you share a file or an alternate format with them. So it is something that is just for you yourself, as you're kind of going through your Canvas material. And you can also see, if you click on the home here, you can see a bit of a summary here as well, um, and the breakdown in terms of the categories here as well. I'm just going to skip down here as well very quickly. I'm just kind of conscious of the time. What UDoIT does is it'll basically scan for some of the most common accessibility issues, and again, categorize them based on if they're errors or suggestions. But there's some more common issues that you might kind of keep in mind, maybe if you're creating content in documents and uploading it in Canvas, or if you're creating it within Canvas itself. So we mentioned things like the structure, not skipping heading styles, things like that. That's one of the common issues that we'll see, where the structure doesn't make sense to somebody who might be using a screen reader, but also somebody who's just trying to kind of make sense of the document itself, and the relationship between the content within it. I mentioned color as well, in terms of not using color alone to highlight content, but insufficient color contrast is another common issue that can happen. So perhaps we have an image with text on top of it, or we've got like just a button with like background color, and like there's text on top of it as well in a different color. Very often this can cause issues, but there are tools that are available, and I can share these afterwards, which are color contrast checkers that you can kind of quickly check to see that there's a sufficient contrast between the foreground and the background of the content that you're sharing. And it can just be a kind of a handy one as well, just to make sure that things are as clear as possible. Another common one as well, which you're probably aware of, is adding alt text or alternative text to images. This helps to describe the image to somebody who might have a visual impairment and might be using a screen reader, but also for anybody who has a poor internet connection, who might load up a page and then the image doesn't load up. It can really help to tell the user, basically, is this an important image? Do I really need to be scrambling to try and figure what this image is, or can I just ignore it? And very often people will ignore it if you have marked it as decorative. So it's not important. It doesn't matter if you see it or not. That's one of the ways to kind of distinguish between them. But within Canvas and within Word and PowerPoint, there are ways to kind of quickly add alt text. And there's ways as well where you can generate alt text through a lot of these tools, but it's kind of better if you're able to add the alt text yourself. Links as well. So adding meaningful text to links, just so that they're not just this really long URL, because again, somebody with a screen reader, it'll all be read out. So HTTP : all of this will be read out to the user. One tip that I like to use with this when adding kind of a meaningful text to my links is if I took all of the links in my document and put them down at the bottom of the page, would they make sense out of context? Would I be able to look at them and go, okay, that refers to this content, this refers to this content? You might have noticed that in Outlook and in some tools, it actually automatically pulls in that information on some links as well. So if you share a Canvas course, it often what it can do now is it can actually create that meaningful text for you. So that can be quite useful. Tables are something that you saw there as well about using table headers and avoiding kind of invisible tables. So if you're using it for structure alone, or avoiding using nested tables, just because it kind of helps make it easier to understand the content that's being shared within tables if they're formatted correctly using these tools. Finally, there, I just want to make mention of if you're sharing kind of multimedia, so if you're sharing videos or audio or anything like that, the tip here is to provide multiple options for accessing the media. So an example here from our president's videos that she puts out is to include closed captions for any of the video content. This is also useful if you have somebody who's accessing the video on a mobile device. You know, maybe they're on the bus to college, and a video shows up that they can actually follow along and understand it without needing the audio for it. The other item there as well is to provide transcripts as well. So this can be useful as well as if you have an actual script that you used when recording the video or recording the audio, you can pop it up as a transcript. And that means, again, it's not putting pressure on the user to actually watch it or to kind of to go to listen to it, that they'll be able to kind of access the transcript. Again, if they have an issue with the content loading, maybe they have a slow internet connection, or if they can't, if there's a barrier in some way for them, if it's a visual or an auditory impairment that they might have. If you have a video transcript, even if they've a visual impairment, a screen reader will be able to read that out for them. So just again, conscious of time, just to let everybody get out in time. We have some further information there. If you are interested in using UDoIt in particular, or if you're interested in learning more, do feel free to contact us at edtech@mtu.ie. We also have our help desk articles, so I've linked those there. Again, I'll be sharing these slides with you afterwards. And we have on our website some resources around digital accessibility. So this is ever growing. We're constantly adding to these resources. So on our website, we have tel.cit.ie/digital accessibility, and we have some items there categorized based on Canvas or Zoom, or if you're creating documents, or if you want to use the digital tools that I just shared there. So that's UDoIt. And there's some information about Immersive Reader as well inside there. And then there's also our help docs. So we've a huge amount of articles in there. Again, we're always adding to this. You can search for it, you can search for articles, and they're quite concise. So generally, you know, it will just show you the information you're looking for. You don't have to kind of trawl through a lot. And then we also have our YouTube channel where this recording will be available afterwards, and I'll share it with you. And we have other recordings available there as well. What I'll do is I'll finish up there. We do have more training going on for the next for the rest of this week and next week. We've training around H5P, which I mentioned here as well. We've training around getting up and running in Canvas as well. So we'd love to see you at them. And if you've any questions, do feel free to contact us at edtech@mtu.ie. Thanks so much.